Thank you.
Good afternoon. We are excited today to be with you to just, kind of stop and take a minute and to just share some of, and I guess it really for us is formative assessment in terms of the influence that what happens when we coach, when we have our 5 literacy coaches sessions, when we offer books, when we offer thinking, and we just offer support. What happens out in your districts? And so today we are using the metaphor of a ripple. And it's in the adaptive schools work as well as cognitive coaching work. It's called a dynamical system. And it's the idea that as you influence, as you drop that pebble in the pond, there are ripples, and you really don't know where these ripples go, and you don't know the depth or the level of influence that happens. That happens for us in classrooms with students, with student achievement, that happens with teachers influencing their peers, or even teachers influencing their buildings or their systems. And so today we are honored to have 2 individuals. We have Tracy Hordisky from Zinzer Elementary at Kennewa. So Kennewa's story continues to be shared. And we have Hillary Baker from East Kentwood High School. And they're going to have about 10-12 minutes to share their story. We will then give you an opportunity to just kind of talk about what you heard. You might have some questions. We're going to ask you to hold on to the questions. Hillary will then have her 10-12 minutes. We'll do the same thing, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of them. So it is my pleasure to share Tracy with you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to zip through some of my ripples here and then share how my classroom has completely changed, made this paradigm shift. And you're going to hear a lot of what Mike was talking about and Jerry echoed in what I'm talking about. This is the how of making this shift. For me, it has been. So we'll call it a little over a decade ago when I first started teaching. And my first year of teaching was extremely difficult. Cried almost every day. I don't know if that sounds familiar to anyone, but it was challenging. I had an uncle who lived in South Carolina who happened to be up for a visit, heard I was having a difficult year, and said, I want to share with you the best bit of advice I have ever been given, and it doesn't matter what career path this is, but make it more about them and less about you. Got it. Yep, totally makes sense. This is just, I felt called to be a teacher. I'm just going to have to tape an aspirin to it, get on with it. You can do this, Trace. And as I fast forward about 3 to 5 years, I was invited by a professor of mine in a master's class, a teaching writing class, to join the Lake Michigan Writing Project. I have to give some LMWP love to my fellow back there. And through this, I was just blown away. Here I was a science major. I didn't care for writing much at the time. I was, but I was less fond of the fact that I didn't know how to teach writing well. So that's why I made the choice to jump in and try this out. And it had been one of the most powerful professional development experiences I had ever been a part of. We had, these pre-briefing sessions, teachers teaching teachers, modeling best practice, and then we would debrief. And all this great discourse around learning, and who does not love great discourse? I mean, this was just awesome. So we move forward from there. I was part of cognitive coaching with Nellie and Shar, and this really started to push my thinking even more so. And I got that in the background of my mind and how to really listen to not only my students but to my colleagues, how to be more thoughtful when I ask questions, those sorts of things. So I end up at this meeting with some of my writing project fellows just last summer. And in the midst of this meeting, somebody starts talking about classroom learning labs. So this is here where these ripples are spreading out and you have no idea where they go. And in the learning lab, where he's described, this is Tim Hargis talking about, oh my goodness, this is what we do. Pre-brief, model lessons, debrief, this great discourse around what best teaching practices are in student learning. And I'm going, oh my gosh, that's what we've done in the writing project. I love this. Why aren't we doing this? I've got to find out more about it. And he said, I've been working with the ISD. Next morning, I have an email from the ISD. It's a training for facilitators of learning labs with Nellie and Shara and Mary. I'm going, oh my word, this is awesome. I've got to be a part of this. So I'm calling Mike. Mike, will you back me if I do this? And of course, he loves PLCs. And he says, oh, CLLs, those are PLCs on steroids. Of course you could be part of this. So I joined. And it was a wonderful training. I get back to school. I'm all fired up, and I'm thinking, I've got to somehow get this going. Well, I'm on off-cycle year. I have 3 goals that I have to attack for part of my evaluation, so why not have the CLLs be part of my goal? See if my colleagues would also agree with me that these are powerful learning experiences to help our kids. So I remember these lovely ladies saying, reach out to us. How can we help you? We'll be there for you. So I emailed Nellie, and Nellie was right there, coaching me. She's coached me every step of the way through this process. And we decided for the first learning lab that took place back in January, that I would host the lesson, writing workshop lesson, and she would be our facilitator. And as she's really listening to what my needs are and how I want to grow and help the students grow, because I was thinking about how to shift the kids to more independence in evaluating their own work, evaluating each other's work, and it just seems that they always go back to, surface level things like, my writing's neater in this piece, and I have better spelling, and I have some punctuation. I put a question mark, kind of like, I don't, always asking, trying to tell me what their learning is, but it's in a question form because they're not sure if they're on the right track, and they often play it safe. And even though I have all these structures in place with, all the techniques that they've been working on, they've had all these objectives, they're highlighted in their notebooks, they know exactly what they've been learning and growing, there's evidence of it right there, there's a checklist right in front of you, and yet they zip right through it and focus on surface level things. So Nellie, how do I get them to be more independent and to actually think for themselves? Well, then that's when she says, it makes me think of Peter Johnston's Opening Minds. That's where we're going with this, and we'll have to talk more about that. So I go online, I order the book right away, I zip right through it, I'm going, oh my word, this is it. This makes so much sense. How do I do this? Well, one of the key pieces initially is this. I still had way too much control of my classroom. And to actually reduce this asymmetrical power relationship and help the kids be more independent, these were some simple things that I had to do differently. And I had no idea that I was that bad at doing some of these things. Asking open questions, I had learned some of that through cognitive coaching, so I felt pretty good about that. And using the uncertainty markers, maybe, perhaps, I wonder, offering ample wait time, but do not judge ideas. I was always trying to affirm, yes, right, you got it. Really trying to encourage that way. Well, immediately, as soon as you evaluate, and I'm doing it inadvertently, I'm shutting down their thinking. They think they've got it. Let's move along. And which is what I was guilty of doing, just trying to move them right along because I've got curriculum to get through. I've got to get this done, and we don't have time to really sit and listen to your thinking. Yikes. So arranging for class members to manage turn taking without you. And this is a little bit later. I'm getting to that point now. It's a little uncomfortable at times, but it is happening, and this is really exciting. Do not repeat children's good ideas so the class can hear them. Oh my word, I was the worst at that. I would immediately I would paraphrase what they were saying and restating it. I was controlling our microphone the entire time, passing it around, and I did almost every single time, restating what the kid's saying. They are not in control of the conversation at all. I don't know if you can even really call it a conversation. They were always looking for the right answer. We get into turn and talk. I'm going to share a little bit about how I get into this. So as I'm sharing with Nellie, I read this. Well, she'd invited me, and so now she's skipping stones at my kneecap. She's not dropping pebbles in the pond anymore. She's saying, come to this writing workshop leadership group with me. And I think you'll really find it beneficial. And while I'm there, here's this other book that you can look at, just gently kind of on the side, telling me to look at this. And thank God for all those snow days this year, because I was reading through this over my snow days going, oh my word, this is how I do this. This is the theory. This is the theory into practice. So our learning lab was on Friday after we got back from winter break, and we had Monday and Tuesday off, so I'm here Wednesday, jumping in with the norms. All right, kids, we're going to change things up here. I was very transparent with them about what types of things I was going to be doing differently. I'm not going to say, yes, right, good job, you got it. That I am not going to try and control the conversation. I'm not going to paraphrase. You really have to listen to one another and hear each other without me doing it. And one of the things that we'll do to help set up the stage for conversation amongst the whole group is a turn and talk. And in this turn and talk, you're going to have the same partner every time. We went over norms for what active listening would look like. We use the eek from the sisters. Instead of elbow to elbow, knee to knee, it's eye to eye, knee to knee. And are we talking in ways that help our thinking grow? And it's all about this growth mindset, and is what we're doing helping our thinking grow? Remembering to really listen to each other, parking your own thinking. I've always been guilty of that, trying to formulate in my mind what my response would be to what someone was saying or to what I had heard, as opposed to really listening to someone. Growing the idea, even if you don't agree with it, give the idea a chance, providing evidence or a reason for your thinking every single time. This is powerful. And that everybody needs to talk. Everybody is accountable. Everybody has to be a part of it. We're used to our high-level kids dominating the conversation, and our low-level kids just kind of passively not really participating. And now it is completely changed. In fact, my high-level kids have often gone through this period where they end up crying because they've never really been asked to be held accountable for their thinking. They just look for they try to get the right answer, and then they are happy. That's it. So when I say, well, tell me more about that, they don't know what to say. And that was one of the biggest surprises for me, was to have the criers at the high end and then my typically lower level kids rising to the occasion, and they have all these wonderful ideas. In fact, oftentimes I'll have kids that are sharing, and I'm going, no, that's because I'm in my mind, I've got the right answer of what I want to hear. And I'll say, well, tell me more about what you're thinking, because I'm not going to evaluate what they've said. And then they totally just nail it. And I'm going, oh my gosh, you just totally taught me something new. I never would have looked at it that way. And so then they're doing that for each other. All the kids are hearing everybody's voices, and that everybody has value. So what a huge shift in culture. The other piece of that, to start this, to get the kids to buy in, I asked them initially, why are there times that you don't share? And very candidly, well, I'm afraid I'm going to get the wrong answer. I'm afraid I'm going to be laughed at. I'm afraid I might offend someone. I'm afraid. I had a long list that I scripted out for them, but they were just afraid. And so oftentimes they didn't share anything. And I said, well, what if it's not about being right or wrong anymore? And this came from something I read in Maria Nichols' Comprehension Through Conversation. And it's about growing our thinking together. And that right there, just that idea, every time I go back to it, this is about growing our thinking. We need all of you to partake in this. And this is a quote from Ken Blanchard, none of us is as smart as all of us. And that's kind of our motto. We say it together When a kid doesn't want to share, I'll just gently say, remember, none of us is as smart as, and then the other kids all say, all of us. And then they're encouraging the one who might not want to share to actually partake in the conversation. So in order to get an actual conversation going, we talked about some of the different moves that we make in conversation, and this is, again, some of the application that came from Maria Nichols. Agreeing, disagreeing, adding on to an idea, or asking for clarification. And the asking for clarification has been, wow. So many kids, again, would just listen to what somebody was saying, but really have no idea what they were talking about, but would never stop to say, I don't understand what you're saying. And the first time I ever had a kid actually ask for clarification, the student, high-level student, who was asked to clarify, didn't know what to do. No idea. These are things that they're not innate. They have to be taught to them. They're not sure. And I think for many of us as adults in collaborative settings, which is like our PLCs, to have this format for knowing how to talk with one another, and that they're learning it's okay to actually disagree, and respectfully, and why it's important to do it. The other piece, too, is that they had to understand that even if, this was one of the reasons why they didn't share, if it was confusing, if it's going to be confusing, I'm afraid it's going to come out and it's not going to make sense. And we talked about how you have to be able to get the idea out there, even if it doesn't seem to make sense, because from there, people can add on to that and help the idea grow, but you have to get it out there in order for it to take place at all. And this is just a sample of one conversation, and this is the second day that I did this. And of course, I'm looking at all the examples in here going, oh, this is a published book. This is really going to happen. And in me having to make the shifts in my behaviors, I wasn't sure if what I would do would facilitate such a conversation. So I have these two students, Grant and Tara, and I have my lovely MESA unit that I'm working on, and we're talking about because of Winn-Dixie, which is a wonderful story about this stray dog and this little girl who adopts this stray dog. So they're in the Winn-Dixie grocery store, and Opal happens to be in there. The dog is just causing a ruckus in the grocery store, and the grocery store owner is calling for the pound. And Opal stands up and says, "That's my dog." So in the MESA unit, it said, that let's have the students think about how Opal might be feeling in that moment. And so I'm thinking, okay, it says right here, she feels worried. All right, kids, how do you think Opal feels? And I'm thinking it starts with a W. You can get it. And I don't, I back off and I just let them go for it. Grant B says, devastated. Because if she were the dog, Opal, if she were the dog, she wouldn't want to go to the pound. And right there already he's socially imagining what Opal might be socially imagining about the dog. I'm going, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. This is awesome. So Tara says, in response to Grant, well, maybe if she likes dogs, she wouldn't like to see one go. And the conversation, like, oh, what just happened there? And I said, well, Grant, could you tell me more about your thinking? You said devastated. And Grant says, nope, I got nothing. So Tara actually responds and says, well, why wouldn't Winn-Dixie want to go to the pound? Ooh. She's getting the thinking going again on her own. Well, Grant said, well, after 75 hours, they kill those dogs. I read that somewhere. And Tara adds on to that and says, yeah, my sister watches shows about that, and I've seen one of those too. And they don't. And then Grant responds, they don't feed them, they kick them, they don't give them water. It's pretty much abuse. And here they explored this thinking and go from, oh, she's devastated because if she were the dog, she wouldn't want to go to the pound. And if I were just looking for a right or wrong answer, that would have been the end of it. So just taking some time to look at the types of moves that were made and charting the thinking and to see how our ideas grow when we make these moves and share is something that the kids have done. And from this, I have so many anecdotal stories that have taken of everything that's happening. And I'm finding that even when a lesson doesn't feel right to me, that's completely normal because no longer is about me. It's less about me. It's more about them, more than it ever has been. And we're on full circle going, oh, I remember when Uncle Harold said. And I just, without Nellie coaching me along and giving me different resources and different groups to share with and collaborate with, this type of change wouldn't be happening. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity. And this is one thing, real quick, one of the kids said, I get unsolicited responses like this almost every day. This makes us understand. It makes us better learners instead of you just giving us the answers and us saying, oh yeah, we should have known that. We kind of give each other hints, and that's how we figure it out. We learn how to figure it out by ourselves, and we learn from our mistakes. And then other kids are saying, it's like we're the teachers. We're teaching each other, but you're still the teacher. And this one said to me, no offense, Mrs. H. I'm quite okay with it. So thank you for your time and listening.